Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Rotter Studios. So I finally decided on the new lens for my Panasonic GX85 camera, the 25mm f1.7. This channel is all about photography, video production, video editing, music, all the good stuff that I love doing. I am filming this episode with the GX85 in its kit lens, the 12 to 32mm, which I find outstanding. I am at ISO 800, 1/60th of a frame rate, and f5. I'm recording the audio with a Tascam DR40. Okay, see that? Yep, that's us. Audio off this camera is great, but I want to have better audio, so I like to use this, and then I sync up the audio to post. Although I love the 12 to 32mm, the reason why I got this lens is I wanted a prime lens. Now, a prime lens is a lens that's fixed. In order to zoom in and out, you need to move forward or backward from your subject. All right? I used to hate that when I started shooting with interchangeable lenses, because like if you're at the zoo or something, you want to get a close-up of a lion, you can't really walk that close to it because they're up on the mountaintop. You're going to have to constantly change out these lenses. So I got myself a zoom lens, a 70 to 200mm for my DSLR Pro Series, L Series lens by Canon. But for these 4/3 cameras, which I love them, and I decided to get one prime lens, a 25mm. It was between the Olympus and the Panasonic. I kept going between the Panasonic 25mm f1.7 and the Olympus f1.8, also 25mm. I searched this for a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I watched every YouTube video I could find. The Panasonic looks phenomenal, but in other videos, people just did not do a good job at demonstrating what this lens was all about. Panasonic looked great, but the Olympus, to me, from the examples I saw, looked more cinematic, which is what I wanted. It seemed to have more life to the images. Maybe it was just the photographer and their talent, which I believe, because in the end, it's all about talent and not gear. The reason why I decided on the Panasonic was two reasons. The price, it was $100 cheaper. This was $249. But at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in purchase the same name brand gear. So I got a Panasonic lens for a Panasonic camera. Same manufacturer. They were tested on the lenses, Panasonic and Panasonic. I didn't want to take the chance of something going wrong where the lens was being misread. I didn't want to risk any chance of a mismatch. That's the kind of stuff I think about. So in the end, I thought I'd be happier with the Panasonic. And it does come down to the photographer. So let's look at this. It's a 25mm lens, which is the equivalent to a 50mm on a DSLR, full frame camera. For those of you guys who don't know what 25mm means, it means the width of this shot. This is 32mm. This is 12mm. The smaller the number, the wider you can film. I like filming wider shots. I cannot stand tight shots. That's a tight shot when you zoom in. This is a 32mm. So I thought a 25 would be a little too much. Because if you shoot, let's say you had a 32mm prime, you're stuck at this zoom range. That's what a prime is. You're stuck at what that millimeter setting is. So if you wanted to get a family portrait and you had a 32mm, you'd have to back up. No problem, but I wanted the best of both worlds. I didn't want to have to constantly back up. It would drive me nuts. So I like to have breathing room, and that's why I like the 12mm, because I'd rather move in just a little bit. Also, it's better to have, in my opinion, a wider lens range because you can always crop it in post-production when you're doing your editing. So a 25mm is the equivalent of a 50mm. I like shooting 35mm on my DSLR cameras. which divided by 2 is 17 roughly. So that's why I thought about going with the 17 millimeter. Now I'm comparing, 17 millimeter, a 20 millimeter Panasonic, a 25 millimeter, and it was getting out of control. Well, I weeded out the 20 millimeter right away by Panasonic because I've heard a lot of people say it's a noisy lens. When it's doing its autofocus, the mechanism is noisy. And I do mostly video with this camera. I don't want any noise when I'm filming because sometimes I like to use the microphone on the camera. I took this kit lens and I moved it to 25 millimeter. So that's what a 25 millimeter shot looks like. I just simply walked around and adjusted how I thought shots should look, and most of the time it wound up around the 20 to 25 millimeter range. That's why I decided on that. People have said it's a light lens. It is a light lens. By the way, I still have this kit lens, which is 12, so if I want a wider lens, I've got it in this kit lens. The f1.7 means better depth of field, which means things will be blurred in the background while your subject in the foreground is clear. But most importantly, it enables you to capture better photos and video in lower light. It's also known as a fast lens or faster glass. So that's why I got this. I wanted to be able to capture a little better in lower light, and 25 millimeters is the perfect range. Open this guy up. We have, which I don't think I'm going to be using, lens hood. It's very light. I do like it. And people say, oh, it feels like it's made of cheap plastic. Yeah, it kind of does feel a little cheap, but in the end, you're only concerned about the glass, so who cares about that? Wow, that's really nice. I was watching videos where people say that this focus ring is very, very smooth, and it certainly is. There's a little give to it. Like when you pull it, there's some nice silky smooth yet firm resistance, and when you stop, it kind of slows down on its own. So it's like spin, slow down. It's a nice, very professional feeling focus ring. This is made of metal. Lens cap. And then we have the actual lens itself. Now, I want to show you guys something. What I recommend you do, it's a little more money, but it's something you really all should do. I bought a UV filter, mainly just to protect your investment. All right, this is Lumix. I think it was like $25. It's 46 millimeter. Since it's brand new, I'm not going to worry about cleaning this lens. Make sure you don't touch it with your fingers. Get your threading in here, and there's threads on the inside of the lens. Just in case there's any dust landed on there. Gently screw it on, and you're done. So what this is going to do is protect your glass. If a rock flies up or anything happens, you don't want it to smash your lens. You'd rather have it chip or crack this protective UV. It doesn't alter your shots in any way. I've used this on all my cameras. I think you'd rather replace a $25 protection UV protector than a $250 lens, or God forbid more pricey. Alright guys, so the 12 to 32 millimeter is off. The 25 millimeter is on. 800 ISO, 1/60th frame rate, and an f3.5 f-stop. This lens looks great, really great. Same lighting. I'm in the kitchen, overhead canned lighting, that's it. Did a little bit of white balancing just as with the other lens. I just moved the camera about 8 inches. It's 8 inches away from this subject in the foreground, which is a 12 to 32 millimeter lens. 8 inches away and it focuses pretty good. This is 6 inches. Let's see. It's having a little hard time. That's okay. Back to the 8, 7, 8. So about 8 inches. I mean, that's pretty good. So let me bring, since it's a faster lens and I can record in lower light conditions, let's bring the ISO down a little bit. ISO 400. That's really good. I prefer shooting and setting up manual settings, starting out with ISO. The lower the ISO, the better, because the ISO is actually the sensitivity of your processor and your camera. The higher you set the ISO, the higher the sensitivity is on the chipset in your camera. So you're creating artificial light, which means you're trying to bring in more light to the camera that's not actually there. So I like to bring in more light to the area, be it with lamps or overhead lighting, set your white balance. Then I bring the ISO down. Because even though these cameras are awesome in low light conditions and they don't show video distortion, meaning like the black pixelation where there's black on the screen, even though they do such a great job, I still like shooting in lower ISO settings. So this is set to 400 now, just to give you guys an idea. It's 1/60th. Let's bring this down to a 3.2 f-stop. Look at that, 2.8, 2.5, 2.2, 2.0, 1.8, 1.7. Look how much brighter that is. Look how sharp that is on the edges. Now you see at the bottom of the lens here, there's a little bit of blurriness. It's really focusing nicely on the Lumix name and on the outer edge here. That's great. Now you're going to get more of that because we've got it set so low, this background is really blurred. So if you move that f-stop up more, you're going to see the background come into focus. But then everything gets darker, and that's how photography works, my friends. This is f/22. You will get a lot less light into this lens just by changing the lens aperture. This is f/5.0. See how the lens is in focus? This is in focus, but a little blurred. Say I want to bring more light into it. You're going to bring it down to, say, f3.5. See? Now the more light you bring into this lens, by lowering the aperture, 3.5, f.2, f1.7, the more light you bring in, the more blurred this is going to be. Well, then you say, well, but what if I want to have this to be sharp and I want this to be sharp as well? Well, then you're going to have to raise this to say f20. It's too dark. Well, then you're going to have to increase the sensitivity of your actual camera by going ISO 800 or ISO 1600 or ISO 3200 or ISO 6400. But now you see with ISO 6400, the black is dancing. It looks to be a little pixelated. Is that right? Because it's trying to bring in light that doesn't really exist. And it doesn't look as sharp to me. So what I would do, I would set my ISO to be 800, aperture to be the f22 that you wanted, and to get rid of this darkness issue, go buy some lighting and illuminate this table. That's what you're going to have to do if you wanted this in focus and this in focus. But if you didn't care, then I would just simply bring this down to a nice f4.0, and this would be out of focus. This is where your skills come into play. You're talking about this lens, so you don't care about this garbage in the shot anyway. So either you would blur that out to focus on the lens, as we've done, or you just simply remove the garbage and have a nice shot. I'm rambling. Let's get some video and photo shots with this lens.